Alrighty, we are here with Jeffrey Gabriel, founder and CEO of saw.com. And we're going to talk about lots and lots of .coms and .orgs and .whatevers. And I don't even know, maybe you guys have some .whatevers. But really, really fascinating side of the domain name business here. Jeffrey slash Jeff. Well, I might throw some Jeffs and Jeffreys at you. Thanks so much for joining. How you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, of course. So uh, we're gonna start off hot. We're just gonna rip the band-aid off because this story is too juicy to pass up. It's not often you get to speak to a Guinness World Record holder in general, but in your particular case, you got the Guinness World Record by kind of being the people behind the sale of the domain name sex.com for $13 million. So
Yeah.
incredible, almost sounds like a headline The Onion made up, and like you lived it.
Yeah.
Can you just take us into your shoes and how that all came about?
Well, I mean, it was back in 2009, and I had a client that was also a lawyer that would refer business to where I worked. And I worked at a company called Cedo, which is a domain marketplace. And that lawyer said, the company that owns the domain name is in bankruptcy, and we need somebody to sell the domain. And so there was some timing behind it. The domain had to sell in a certain amount of time. It was around the 4th of July. I think it was like the 3rd of July, and I was in Las Vegas with now she's my wife, but she wasn't then, and my parents for the 4th of July weekend. And I got the call saying, we've awarded you and Cito the opportunity to sell sex.com, and we had to have it sold by, I think it was like October 15th or something of that nature. And so it began. And my job was to go out there and remember, this is 2009. It was right before I think the iPhone was released or it just happened, right? So I was calling into some of these adult related companies. The funny thing is they all say they're in advertising. And when you call in, they usually have fake names or pseudonyms they go by. I've been to the adult conferences, which was very eye opening to me, being a small town guy from Massachusetts. And the funny thing is that trying to sell it, speaking to people, talking about the value, back then, a lot more people typed in domain names that they wanted to visit. So sex.com in general got an immense amount of traffic from India, which was surprising. And it got millions of visitors a day. Um, I would guess most domains, the number of visitors per day has gone down because people are using, Google, and they've put just search terms in the browser as with it because more competition. But it got a serious amount of traffic. And the funny thing is, when selling it, I met with some of the bigger players and some of the bigger adult businesses at the time. Playboy was almost in bankruptcy or very close to it. They were in trouble. And then talking to some of the more well-known brands, they didn't really change with the internet. So I found myself speaking with some of the biggest players in the space. And I think a lot of people don't realize, but some of the larger porn sites, even to this day, are only owned by one or two different companies, and they own most of the business. I spoke to the heads of them. I actually received an offer of the 13 million in cash, but I actually got a better offer of 17, but it was paid off over 3 years, and the amount of money for the down payment wasn't enough to pay off all the debtors that were owed in the bankruptcy. So the judge made the decision that cash was better, right? And even though that would have been really a better deal if, like, you and I owned it, the job of a judge in a bankruptcy is to clear up those that are owed money and move on. And so the deal ended up going through, and it was a pretty remarkable and crazy experience. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. What? I mean, there could be a movie about just that right there, but um, a movie not for all ages. But
No.
what makes I mean, regardless of what category you want to consider that domain name in, what made the difference from that domain name? Like why was that such a crazy high value and like record setting sale versus like many of the much smaller domain name transactions you see every day?
I think when people ask me that in general, and that goes really for any domain name, right? Are the things you look at is the obvious. Is number one, .com is the best extension in the world. It's the most popular. It's the most widely known and trusted, right? And everything I'm going to say right now, there's an exception to every rule, okay? But in 99.9% of the time, the .com is the most valuable, right? So that's obvious. The next thing you look at is the length, right? So when you say, okay, well, it's 3 letters, so yeah, it's got to be short. But insurance is really long, but that's really the shortest way you're going to get insurance. So that's short, right? So it's relative, right? So then at the time, adult was still paying really high, they call it RPMs, like, revenue per thousand visitors, right? So people were paying for porn at the time, the advertisers are paying a lot, there was money in it. And sex obviously sells. And so at the time, that industry, the extension, the length, right? And then another thing you look at is how universal it is in many languages or across the world. People know that word. You know, if you look at other domains, like I'll give you an example of another name that I've been part of selling is yoga. That's one of my favorites. So you own yoga.com. All right, it's 4 letters. It's a .com. It's yoga in almost every language on the planet, right? And if you put the letter S at the end, a yogas, that doesn't make sense, right? You would have to put other adjectives in the beginning, so that's kind of a perfect one as well, and that would command a really high price tag, right? So that would do it, and then the industry that it falls into obviously affects, and then you have other factors as well, which I could get into if you'd like me to. Um,
Well, on the flip side of that, I'm just curious before we move on. The the Guinness World Record side of things. Like, what happens when you set a record like that? Like, they give you like a plaque, they give you beer. Like, what what does that look like?
Well, I mean, it was funny because when we sold the domain name, right? And remember, this isn't a website sale; it's a domain sale, right? So it's just the domain, nothing else with it.
Which
We
which
sold the
is
domain.
in layman's terms is like it's the hosting or like the right to have that site, right?
You're just really buying a contract to be able to use the domain. That you never technically own a domain name, right? So Google.com is the domain, right? But then what they show on it is the website. That's what makes it a
Yep.
website, right? So it's just the right to own that. And what happens when you pretty much make a record breaking thing is that the sale came out, it became public knowledge, and so then you would submit to the Guinness Book of World Records what has happened, and then they do like an investigation, and then they come back and they say, yes, you are approved and you are in. Because I worked at Cito, they actually got like a certificate, and I kind of got like a sub certificate, and then it was the number one domain sale. But what was funny is if you look, I think right now they have it as business.com, and that kind of made me angry at the time because it was only like a year or so later that it sold. It sold for like 18 or 19 million, but not because my record was beaten, but it was a website. I was like, that was a business sale. That wasn't a domain sale. But since I've sold it, I believe the highest reported public sale is voice.com, which is like 25 million. So I'm happy to see that the values in my industry continue to grow. And I'm sure there's some that went for more money than that recently.
And you said the famous idiom. I don't even know if it's an idiom, but sex sells. That should actually be the name of the movie.
Yeah, it could
Said
be.
movie that we talked about for the sale of this. So
Yeah, there's a book about sex.com in general. I'm not in it. It actually goes up to the point that I kind of come into it. But
you're like the Grim Reaper of it. No, I'm just
oh yeah,
kidding.
kind of. Yeah, I kind of ended it.
So let's get to another 3 letter word. Saw.com, SAW.com, which is 6 letters in a dot if you think about it. But your business now, lots of success with domain names and the broking of it, the buying and selling of it. And I have so many questions here. It's such a fascinating topic, but let's rewind a bit. I always thought domain names is like a really unique and potentially lucrative area that to get into, whether it's you're buying and doing it yourself or you're using a broker like you. How did you personally find like a match here of, hey, we should get into this domain broking business?
Well, before the market meltdown of 2009, I actually got my start selling loans, and then I was working for an HR staffing company that would sell kind of like a monster.com service. And I was doing quite well there as a salesperson. I think I was like maybe number two or three out of 200 salespeople selling that service. And then when the employment market crashed and the market crashed in general, our business lost its funding. It used to be called Job Fox out of Washington, D.C., and I was out on the street. Um, and I lost my position, and I was applying to a lot of companies that I tried to sell to in the Boston area, and Cito gave me a shot. And the funny thing was is the pay that they offered me was actually, the salary was less than what I was making on unemployment. And I just said, I don't even care. I need commission. I'll do commission. And then, I lived in Worcester. The job was in Boston. I was driving about an hour and a half each way to get out there. And I said to myself, I can't let this fail. I can't give up on it. And I got to give it everything I got. And I did. So I got there, started selling names, really gave it everything I had. Within the first year, it became number one. I started in May, and I was number one by the end of the year. And then the next year, I broke all their records, and I sold sex.com. I left there, started my own business with a colleague of mine, and did that for about a year. And one of my customers that used to be mine from Cito owned a portfolio of about 365,000. I'll say it again, 365,000 domain names. And he said, why don't you come and sell for me and build me a team of people here in the Caymans, and you can bring your book of business with you, and you can really focus on selling my names. And I said, sure. I told my wife, so I can always start another domain brokerage. This is really an opportunity. So we packed up, moved down there, lived there for 7 years. I was number four. The company grew to 120, but on the sales side, we got up to 50 salespeople and some support staff. And when I left there, we did, I'd say, about 480 million or 490 million in sales as a team that I managed and helped build and put together. Yeah, I mean, that was quite an experience. And then the owner of that company sold it all to GoDaddy shortly after I left. So yeah, that was a wild experience.
It was due to the Danica Patrick commercials, wasn't it? That inspired the sale.
Yeah.
That was back in that era.
Oh yeah, I remember that. But what's funny about that story with Danica, I've actually met Bob Parsons a few times, who is the founder of GoDaddy, who now is the founder of PXG, the golf clubs. But before that, do you know what company he founded?
I looked
You're a
it up.
little young.
I looked it up some point, but I totally blanked. What was
I
it?
think it was Lotus. It was Lotus Notes that then became Intuit,
Mm.
and then that. So he created that, sold that, then started GoDaddy, and he said they spent their last budget on the GoDaddy girl at the Super Bowl, and
Oh
if it
no
didn't
way!
work, they were going to shut the business down.
Oh my god!
And it worked. There was like one final Hail Mary gasp of breath, and then that brought GoDaddy out of the ashes and helped bring it. They made a lot of great moves as well. I mean, you have to give them credit. It wasn't just some girl in a
Right.
courtroom shaking her chest, but yeah, so GoDaddy ended up purchasing what's called the registrar, his domain portfolio, and some other assets that we built over the years. And then I decided it was time because I always had the entrepreneurial itch, and I think one of the things that really draws me to domain names and why I really love what I'm selling and the product I'm selling is a lot of the times I get to talk to the entrepreneur who's so excited about the new product, or I get to talk to a product owner who is launching a new product under a business, and or it's just a new service or something that's really exciting. And a lot of the times they're so tight-lipped and worried about telling me about it. I don't know what it's going to be about, and then you see it. You might see it on TV. You might see it downtown New York, in the in Times Square. One of our clients sent me a picture of, we got them finally.com, and they had it posted in Times Square and sent a picture of it there in Times Square to say, hey, we're up. I'm like, no shit, you know? So that's really exciting to hear that, and then also trying to make the deals work and helping them find it because we've helped name some of these products when the one they wanted wasn't available. So it's a great business.
What was the like the biggest adjustment you had to make, knowing that like this is my own business. I'm not part of like some larger organization anymore. What was like the first big entrepreneurial growing pain that you grew through?
I think one of the things is that as the company grew, right? So when I got to the Cayman Islands, we had a small office with a very tight knit group, and then by the time we left, we even had like HR, right? It was real. It was like a real business now. This isn't just like a bunch of guys floating around in the ocean going to drink out of coconuts here, right? This was a real business with like real departments and things happening, and a real deal business. And we had a lawyer, a marketing team, like we had all this support staff, and you as someone who's working at this company don't really maybe give all the credit you can to those departments. And when you start your own business, all those departments are you, right? And you don't even know how to send I mean, you don't even have fucking email. You have nothing, zero, right? So I went from um, building this company, which had some stuff already going, had some developers, but I got in there and it's like, he was the domain investor with the ideas, myself and the other sales guys. And I've always asked the sales guys and other people that helped me, like, what are you thinking? What are you seeing on the front line? And then we were putting that together and really turning it into that machine that turned out all those sales. Now it's like, I'm just sitting here and it's my dog and myself, and I'm like, what the fuck do I do now? And you have all these plans, but it's like, okay, how do we get to there? And it's a big jump, and that was tough, right? And it was hard. And the other thing is, you don't have the money, and the expenses are there, and the money's not coming in, and you got to think about that. So what I did was I'm always been someone who's lived conservatively in my lifestyle, and I wrote a check and gave myself my own company a loan for $100,000. And, it wasn't like it was an easy, like, haha, if the hundred's gone, we'll go get another 100. Like, it wasn't like that. It was like, I'm betting on myself. I am seeing if I can make this work. And then I said to myself, okay, what are the things I have to do right now to start making money? Right. And so it's like, okay, I need at least a shitty website, right? Obviously, I need a domain. I already had saw.com. I bought that years before because it was a really good deal. There's nothing behind it. One of my friends says it's sweet ass web names. It's not, but like that's
That's what I thought everybody knew that.
Yeah, exactly. But so we had the domain. I had to get a website going. I had to get other technology rolling. So I had to talk to people. I had to hire some folks. I had to get this kind of going, and then different processes rolling. And I really just made that set of goals, and I went for it. But it was hard adjusting to not having anyone in marketing and doing that. And it seems like it's this unachievable mountain to climb, and it can be lonely as well. Going from all of this bustling activity to you in your office in silence, and you look behind you and it's you, right? And I think you got to be really ready for that. It's almost like the guy who acts like he's so cool and he ditches his girlfriend and he's single now, but then like, now what? Right? You're all alone and you're home alone at night and the kids are gone and like, whatever, like it's not as cool as you might have thought it was. So, but now it's time to get to it. So, I think that was a big adjustment for me.
So now your new girlfriend, your wife, saw.com.
My wife of 17 years. Yeah.
You mentioned that now the team's up to like 25 people. Like you've got, you've come a long way. Like you've clearly gotten through like the early days of figuring out like, oh, we need to get email set up. We need to, a shitty website, as you said. What's been helpful in, building out the business enough that like you can support a team of, multiple dozens of people and growing like that?
Sometimes when I'm paying out all this money, I'm thinking to myself, where the hell is all this money coming from? But it's still coming in, right? Because you don't really like it's almost like it's not money. And if you're handing people cash, what you're paying out, you'd be like, holy shit. But, I'll tell you something that when I started the business, I called people that I worked with over the years that I knew had a great work ethic, aligned with my personality and the way that I like to manage, and can take very direct and honest feedback, and are willing to maybe not have the most polished product or polished experience internally, and allow me to make mistakes, whether it's the email's not working, or this email campaign went out and it's all wrong, or Jeff's doing the marketing and he's never done any marketing and it looks like shit, and then like they're okay with that, but they know that I know the product. I'm willing to stand by it. I'm willing to stand by them and go get it. And if you can get a couple people to join you, um, that are like that and are willing to do that and are willing to work hard with you, I think you're in a good place. But I think at the same time, along that path of getting there, there's a lot of distractions. I mean, you open your laptop every day, there could be 50 emails that are all people offering you other services. There are customers saying, maybe you guys should do this. I'd like your product so much more if you did that. And it's like, yeah, but you look at it and you got to say to yourself, okay, well, that could take 3 weeks of dev time, and it's 4 guys that I'm paying every month. So that's like, that's a lot of money to do this, and it's a nice to have. So you got to figure out what would be nice to have and what's going to make me money and what is the goals that I'm trying to meet, and do not let anything get in your way. Right. And like, you really got to focus on whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And I think that that's really gotten where we are. I remember I have this friend who's a really successful entrepreneur, and he never went to college, but I said to him, I'm thinking of leaving Uniregistry and starting my own business, but I'm so worried about failing. And he said, what the fuck are you worried about? I'm like, well, what if I fail? And he goes, I think I failed 4 times today and I wasn't even out of bed yet. He goes, you got to realize if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to fall on your face every single day repeatedly. And he's like, who cares? And then it's like in your mind, you think before you do it, what if I fail? But it's like, well, when are you going to fail? And how many times are you going to fail? And can you fail gracefully and move on? And now it's like almost like water off a duck. I don't even, if it's broken and it fails, it's like, okay, what failed? Okay, let's fix that. And I'm all like telling someone, let's get it fixed. Let's get out there and figure it out. Right. And sometimes it fails, and then other times it bombs. If it bombs, like, okay, we'll move on. And then you got to keep going and adjust and learn. Right. So that's how I see it.
How do you keep that mindset as a business owner of like not letting stuff get to you that much?
I'll be honest. If you can keep a secret just between the two of us, I think that it does, and I think that people who say it doesn't get to them are lying to you. I just think it's what degree it gets to them, and I think as time goes on, if you actually care about the business and the people you work with, you're a human and you should have emotion towards what you're trying to do. I think. I think part of caring, though, and what I've learned over the last couple of years is you can't let your caring turn into anger because you're frustrated because things aren't happening the way you want them to. And I think and the thing I've learned is that people are not going to care as much about your baby as you are, or as much about your business as you will. And so when the email isn't working on a Saturday, or the CRM is fucked up and it's not taking the leads, or something is broken and they're not around to fix it, you can't be mad at them, because they're not an owner of the business. You signed up for that. And so you need to be that person. And I'm telling you, I work every day of the week. I'm not saying I work all day every day, but every Saturday I'm doing a little bit of work. On Sunday I'm checking to make sure shit's working properly. If it's broken, I'm sending emails to people saying you got to fix this or that, or looking at what customers are saying to keep things rolling. And you're the janitor, you're the marketer, you're the CEO, you're the tax guy, you got to stay on everybody. That's it.
So I'd love to get in the weeds a bit more about the whole domain side of the business.
Sure.
Um, which gets very meta, by the way. I'm sure you're over it right away, but it was very meta and doing research and looking up all this stuff about domains and how it works on your site and all that. And then it's just like there's a domain behind your whole domain business. So it depends how many levels you want to go to here. But for starters, what's like the short and sweet basics of just like how domains are bought and sold most of the time on the internet?
Well, I mean, you can list a domain for sale on our marketplace or on a lot of other providers. And I think the easiest analogy I can give you is that it's just like buying a pair of pants, on Mercari, on eBay, or wherever else. So you make an offer on it, or you can just add it to your shopping cart and buy it. When a domain is purchased, I would say the next analogy that's closest to it would be really like wiring money from one person to another. So if the domain is at GoDaddy, but you wanted to move it to another registrar like web.com or its network solutions, then you would give this person a code and then they would transfer it over, which is a very, a secret code. And then they're doing this with like wiring money from one person to the other. And then it's in your account. And then, you control it and do as you wish with it. That's really the basis of it.
And how, what are some key things to keep in mind when you're looking for a good domain name, like today in today's ever crazy changing online world?
Okay, so I think the thing is right now, for example, when I started saw.com, the .ai domain extension was not that popular. Now it is wildly popular, and I know there was a period of time that you could get .ai domains actually for free. They were just giving them away, right? But we just sold a .ai for $500,000. I've sold others for millions, right? And so the value of that has gone up sharply. The problem with that is that it's very trendy to own a .ai domain name, but what a lot of the public doesn't understand, for example, and I'm going to bring this into picking domains, is .ai is Anguilla. It's what's called a CCTLD. It's a country code top level domain. It's a tiny little country that most people don't even know where it is in the Caribbean.
That's okay? I knew. I've seen so many .ai's and never thought it could be tied to a country. That's so funny. Oh my god.
Anguilla. It's a 13,000 person country, and it makes up about 40% of their GDP. Okay, they don't believe in gambling, and let's go back to sex.com. They don't like pornography. Okay, and they also don't like other things that are against the Lord's name. And when I lived in the Cayman Islands, they didn't allow any gambling whatsoever. Number one. Number two, you had to be, the bars closed at 12 o'clock on Saturday night, right at Sunday, because it was the Lord's day. You had to go home. All right, so just to give you an idea of what some of these nations are like, and they're the ones calling the shots on restrictions and what can happen on their domains. And so if you bought, let's say blackjack.ai, and you wanted to create a blackjack dealer that is AI for people to and gamble on it, and you just spent $500,000 on that, you might wake up one day and that domain is gone because you violated their registry agreement that you actually agreed to when you go to GoDaddy and you register that domain names. But you don't know that because you just think they're all the same, right? So what I'm getting at is if you are an entrepreneur and you're going to register something that might seem a little different but might look cool, again, like .io, okay? IO is Indian Ocean territory. One of the things that is going up in debate right now, and IO is very popular with startups and with tech companies, Indian Ocean territory was an island that was taken over by the English military. They evicted all the people that lived there and put a base there, okay? And the reason why they put it there is a refueling place for the US and the UK so they can bomb the shit out of China if there's a problem, okay? It's actually Mauritius's island, and so they're actually going to get it back pretty soon. And if that happens, technically the .io domain extension should go away. So what would happen if you had your business on it, right? So there's a big question: what's going to happen? Because Mauritius already has their own extension, and .io would technically be part of Mauritius now. So what happened? The decision hasn't been made, but So, anyways, if you're looking at buying a domain extension, you should look into the background of that extension, right? .com is almost like U.S. currency. Everybody in the world is comfortable with it.
I
Now,
thought you were going to say .com is short for Cambodia.
yeah, it could be Cambodia. Yeah. But what I'm saying is like I saw an email address that you emailed me from before is Hippo Direct, right? HippoDirect.com. So the perfect domain for you would be hippo.com, but hippo.com would probably cost you a couple $1,000,000. You obviously can't, you don't want to spend that. Whether you can afford it or not is irrelevant. But if your product was called Hippo and you're going to be targeting like the basic consumer, right? If it's some Hippo product, maybe it's something for like car polish or whatever. It doesn't fucking matter what it is. Getting the .ai, if you walk up to a random person on the street, they might not even know what that means. They might have never even heard of .ai. So if you're doing business to consumer, it might be better to get hippo.com, and hopefully your business takes off, and then you could go get an upgrade to like hippo.com, right? And so you don't want to bankrupt yourself. But if you're like a startup and you're really cool and you guys got the really cool coffee machine and you got all this cool stuff going on, maybe .ai is better because it's trendy. And maybe that will help when you put it on, a book or a brochure when you try to go get funding and you want to put it up on the PowerPoint that we are this really cool .ai company, we're forward thinking. And that makes sense. And that makes sense to your business. Same with .io. But then there's other extensions. It's the same thing. Like .net has fallen from grace over the last few years. I call it, your father's domain extension, because it's just, people just don't use it anymore. You just don't see it really out there as much. New companies aren't buying it. But you could get a smoking deal on a one-word .net domain. And if you're targeting consumers, they're more comfortable with .net than .ai, right? So you need to think about those things, when you're buying a business or starting a business.
And shout out Hippo Direct. That's actually my parents' family business is Hippo Direct. So that email should have been from Max at maxpodcasting.com. So we'll have to look into that later. Small world. It's tied to the calendar or something. But anyway, that's so fast. Well, I had no idea that, I had never looked into that so many of those extensions could be tied to actual countries. Like I know a lot of countries are like that, but I didn't know some of the popular terms that you see today in domain names are like that too. So that's fascinating in itself.
Well, so I would think about like action words to make the price cheaper for a 2-word, right? Like get Hippo, try Hippo, stuff like that. I wouldn't do things that like are against what people are used to. Like if you try Hippo now today, .net, and it's like
40%
it just looks
off.
like shit.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and it just looks like shit, right? And it's hard for people. The thing we call the radio test. If you run a radio ad, will people know actually where to go after they listen to the ad?
Right.
Or they're gonna, it doesn't make sense. Or people who the company name is this, they advertise the company name, but then the domain doesn't match at all. So like, you're asking them a lot to remember your company and remember the domain and go to your site and convert. Like you got to think about, the hurdles.
Yeah, that CTA's got to line up and got to be short and sweet there.
Sure does.
And have a hippo in it, of course. No, but
yeah.
what other ways has like the domain name business changed over the years besides like those extensions that you were talking about? Like what else stands out to you?
When I got in the business, it was a lot less mature than it is now, and it's a lot more formalized. And the companies seem to, the main players all seem to be in place. When I first got in the business, it wasn't really quite that way. GoDaddy was much smaller, for example, and I think Network Solutions probably owned the majority of the market share at the time. Also, if you go to a domain name and you see these links that it's just a really crappy landing page with links on it, right? And you click on them and they bring you to another advertising page. That's called parking. At the time when I got in the business, parking was probably paying 200, 300% more than it is now, maybe even more than that. So domain investors, and that's the reason why the guy that started University that I worked for owned so many domain names, was he was doing this thing called tasting, that you could actually register a domain for like 3 days, and if you didn't want it, you could return it and get your money back. So he would test it for up to 3 days, see how much money it made in parking. If it made more than what it cost to have, he'd keep it. So over a period of years, him buying names and others buying names, doing tasting, the parking was paying millions of dollars a month. And so when I first got in the business, there was a period of time where the parking revenue on, like, say, a domain like sex.com would be like $100,000 a month. And in some cases, people would sell that domain on a multiple of like 3 years or 4 years. And that would be more money than the retail price that you would sell it to a big company. So you could have like server.com. Server ads are really expensive through Google's PPC network. And that server.com might be making, 10,000 a month in parking. So someone would sell that at a 48-month multiple, $480,000. Well, Microsoft isn't going to pay you 480. They might pay you 200 for it. So there was a disconnect in some ways where investors were willing to pay more than retail buyers. So that's changed. And then there's a lot of changing in the business in general, with the companies, like I said, are a lot more mature than they were before.
What about, you hear the term domain squatting? Is that the same thing you're talking about with park domains, or is that a little bit different?
No, like a squatter, like when it comes to parking, you could have freemaps.com was a domain we always used as a testing bed, but like it could be hippo.com. It doesn't matter what it is. But then you could also do parking on Facebook, right? Facebook.com. And a lot of people would mistype that, which would generate a ton of traffic. And those people click on the links. That would be domain squatting, right? And
So you're like targeting typos, really, like everybody who if you've ever accidentally typed something in wrong and you're like, wait a second, what, this site is completely different.
yeah, it says like there's a virus on your computer or one of those things. Yeah, so that would be something where someone has intentionally registered a domain name that is profiting off of some sort of a trademark holder or the goodwill of a business, right? And so that would be a technical squatter. In my business today, I'll give you an example, which is actually really funny. I was at Chili's with my kids. Okay, they love Chili's. They're 11 and 7, and some nights my wife wants a night off, so they do have 2-for-1 beers. So I'll, Father of the Year, will take my kids down there. I'll get
very selfless of you with considering the discounted beverage in mind.
Oh yeah, I think they know all the other dads that are there while we're there. So and they got that little video game thing. So one night I was at Chili's with my kids, and on in the booth next to us, there was a guy saying to another guy, I'm starting a business. He's talking about his new idea. And I didn't really hear the whole idea. And I was on the edge of my seat waiting for him to say the domain, because I wanted to see if it was actually for sale on our platform. I would have loved it. That would have like made my day. I didn't hear the domain, but I did hear that the friend goes, "Oh my God, someone's squatting on your name." And it's like, well, wait a minute. I wanted to chime in, but I didn't. But it's really funny to me when an entrepreneur, someone looking to start a website today or last week or 6 months ago, goes to a domain and immediately says the person who owns that's a squatter. Well, how did he know that you wanted to start this business when he bought the domain 15 years ago? And it could be like a defunct business. They spent $500,000 on that domain, or people don't realize that Microsoft actually owns over 60,000 domain names, right? And you don't know if it's theirs. So, you have to prove intent to make someone a squatter. So, there's a very fine line between squatting and investing or owning, right? So that's, kind of what you have to think about.
Well, a real quick note on Chili's. This is a crazy connection. So actually, I had a I hadn't thought about this in years. I had an internship in college at a marketing agency down in Dallas,
Uh-huh.
and the big client for this project we were working on was Chili's, or Brinker International, who owned Chili's, and they were looking for like us, this team of interns who are all millennials, for ideas to like make the dining experience and the eating experience at Chili's more engaging and interactive. And we didn't come up with the idea for like the video game tablet and all that. Like they were already starting to roll that out, but it was around the time they
Oh,
were. But we basically brainstormed like all these ideas for like games you could play and like things that you could do like more, together as a family, and more ideas that were more than just like traditional eating at the table. And it's like pretty cool to see that like those video games and that tablet and stuff is still alive and well. But obviously the real key is the 2-for-1 beer specials. That's really the answer there.
I think they figured it out also that they now have TVs outside of the bar.
Mm,
So you
yep,
can see when you're in the dining room, there'll be a TV in the
that's a
corner,
good
so I
point.
can watch, football, and I might stay for one more round to see the end of the game or something. You
Yeah,
know,
that's clever. Well, yeah, they're just adding more purchases there. But it's so
yeah.
funny now because don't I feel so old, and you probably feel so old listening to it, that was the project. How do we appeal to these young millennials? And now it's like they're probably concerned about how do we appeal to Gen Alpha and Gen Beta. I mean, my daughter born this year is Gen Beta, and it's like crazy, like first year of that. So millennials are getting up there now, right? No, well. Before we reveal too many generations at once, let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A here. You ready for it?
Fire away. Let's do it.
All right. Let's get wild. Let's take you back to Cayman. What was
Mhm.
the what was the most like pinch me I'm in paradise moment you had in Cayman?
Oh God. I mean, the beach there, 7 Mile Beach, is absolutely unbelievable. And when you walk out to it, it's just like white sand and the clear water. But what's really interesting about that place is different than probably anywhere else on earth that I've been to is even though there's a massive amount of money there, people don't really flaunt it as much as you might think. And I've been at a really crappy bar having some drinks on the beach, and it's not Chili's, unfortunately. They don't have that there, but it's a.
Bummer.
But one day I was teasing this guy because he was smoking those like Capri cigarettes that were really long and skinny,
Uh,
and I was it was like, don't old ladies smoke those? Like, what are you doing? You're a grown man. And I was teasing him, and then he walked away, and someone said, you're just making fun of. I was like, no, who? And he goes, oh, that was the heir of the bazooka gum fortune you were making fun of. And then like another time I was at the same place, and these two Russian guys were asking me if I wanted to go play golf with them the next day, but I had to work. I actually had a really busy day, and I said, no, thanks, I'm all set. And it turned out that one of those guys, I think he was I forgot his last name, it's a Russian last name, but he is the owner of the Nets.
oh
Um,
yeah. He was he used to be right, Mikhail
yeah,
Prokhorov.
yeah, yeah. Yes, I think that
Uh,
was it.
who
I didn't even
who
recognize.
who was famous? I mean, people. Yeah, he was well known and like a big splash when he came in the league. But I just remember that Bill Simmons from then ESPN at the time always called him mutant Russian Mark Cuban.
Yeah, I'd say so. He was nice to me. I
Yeah.
had no idea who he was, but someone told me when he left, that's who you said no to, and I didn't even. I
Wow.
was like,
You
I
meet a
should
lot
have
of
maybe said no.
you meet a lot of personalities. We've got a
Yeah,
we've
so it's an interesting place. Definitely living there.
I've got a friend whose family used to have a place there, and I was fortunate enough to go to one vacation there, and I completely agree. Like the beaches, like the white sand beaches combined with that crystal clear water there, I think it might be the nicest beaches I've ever seen. Like they were just gorgeous. But you're right, it doesn't, maybe because it's a little farther away. I don't know. It doesn't get talked about quite as much as some of those other areas, but it's awesome. So cool. Well, we could talk about Cayman all day. You can
Yeah.
tell I'm very rapid with my rapid fire. All right.
Yeah.
What is your what is a one line sales tip you've learned from your sales career?
One line sales tip. So any budding salesperson or to any grizzled old man like me,
For anybody. You
tip.
take that grizzled young man, but go ahead.
A grizzled young man. Yeah. Honestly, I would say know your product. All right. And what that means, I'll go in a little more detail real quick, and we'll go on to the next question. Is when I say know your product, know everything that supports it, know all the vendors around it, and know everything you can about it. And if you do that and you spend the time, you are prepared for every possibility that you're going to hear. And what a great salesperson does is they solve problems, they don't sell. And so if you can help people solve problems and attribute it to things that are going to happen next, or understand the problems that people are having, you can definitely find solutions, and they will buy them from you because of that. And then they'll refer their friends to you. I don't think you need to read sales books, practice, or do all these things and have like the tooth that goes ding, and all that bullshit that people kind of associate with slimy salespeople. I really think if you really immerse yourself in your product, in your industry, and what's going on, you will immediately have a leg up and you'll be in good shape as a salesperson. And I don't think many people do that, to be honest.
Well, that was fantastic and profound, and I'm gonna ruin it with this next question.
Go for it.
You mentioned Worcester.
Worcester, yeah.
Yeah, I already didn't pronounce it the native New England way, but has an interesting spelling if you're not familiar with that area. What happens in Worcester? What happens there if you were to pronounce all the letters there? Like, what do they do to you?
Worcester. You get corrected, of course. We know your outsider quite quickly.
We should have done this whole interview. If that's your natural voice, we should have done this whole interview like that.
Yeah, it's an AI filter.
But they no, that spelling always tripped me up. I just imagine you get some bad dirty looks if you pronounce it Worcester.
Worcester.
And the last one, I heard from a little birdie that you've been to the Playboy Mansion before.
Oh, no.
What's something most people would be shocked to hear about what the Playboy Mansion's actually like?
It's actually not as big as people think it is, and it's not as big as it looks on TV. And I know when I got there, I was a little disappointed. I mean, it was
That's it?
big. It's not like as big as I thought it was going to be. There was some interesting parts of it that were pretty cool. And the grotto's not very big either. You'd think that would be the case, but I guess that would be the thing. And it's nice, but I just thought it was going to be massive. That's what I thought.
Yeah, well, we'll have to call it the Playboy apartment or the Playboy.
Yeah,
condo.
I don't know what to call it an apartment, but I mean, you see it on. I don't know. I've seen it in bunch of shows, in movies and stuff
Entourage,
like that.
Curb.
Entourage, that whole thing in that area, and I've seen where the scene was filmed, and it just looks so much bigger, and it just isn't. It isn't that big. So.
Well, on that heart-wrenching note, thanks so much, Jeffrey.
There's other things that are really big there, but not that. So let's put it that way.
Bazinga, as Sheldon Cooper says. Well, thanks so much, Jeffrey, for coming on, sharing your wild stories on wild stories, and a lot about the domain name business. I think it's really, really fun and cool, and you've built and are building a really inspiring business. So thanks for taking the time. I know if people want to find out more, they can connect with you on LinkedIn, or they can go to saw.com. That's SAW.com. Anything else that you want to shout out? Any other CTA you got?
Yeah, I mean, I know you focus on a lot of different entrepreneurs. If you have questions, being a guest on here, if you want to email Buzz, BUZZ at SAW.com about, hey, I'm thinking of this or that. Maybe we'll give you some free advice if that's what you need. If you're on the fence about something, happy to help. That will go directly to myself and my assistant Vlad. So we'll certainly be there to help you.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And Buzz Lightyear will get hit up as well. But
yeah, exactly.
Thanks again, Jeff. Last thing, final thoughts. Just literally one line. Could be words to live by. It could be something else in your Mass accent. Whatever you want. Whatever you want. Send us home here.
Giddy up.
Bring on the bongos.